4 of my favourite breath techniques to help when we're working with tight jaw, tight skull, head, neck, and generally any pain in the body. So breath expands, pain constricts. Breath is life. Breath is the #1 healing tool we have as human beings that can bring expansion and release and vitality and energy into the body. There's 4 I wish to show you today. Introduce you today. I'm going to do separate videos on each so you can download and save. But I want to introduce you to 4. And at the end of this video as a gift, I'm going to show you a tongue mudra that will instantly relax the jaw. So if we're looking at breath expanding the mind, breath expanding consciousness, breath expanding the lungs, it's really potent medicine. Now, the tight jaw can be physical, it can be anatomical, it can be through lifestyle, it can be through stress, but also if you are doing a lot of deep somatic work, if you have a high Vata constitution, if you're using dream work as healing, if you are someone who astral travels, if you are doing ancestral healing, at night when you're sleeping, the body will be moving. So even if you have a healthy lifestyle, even if you have 0 stress during the day, at night there may be excess movement. That will also be shown in the jaw, is clenching and movement. And I think that's important to know because sometimes we are trying to fix ourselves so much, but actually when we're sleeping, we have no control, the subconsciousness takes over. So if we're looking at breath, 4 of the breath works I wish to introduce you today. One of them is Kapalabhati breath. There's versions of this called skull shining breath, breath of fire. And when I show the actual technique, I'll also go through contraindications because there is contraindications to each breath that you need to be aware of. But Kapalabhati, why would we use that? Why would we use something called skull shining breath? Well, it literally cleanses the frontal lobe. So if your tightness in the jaw, if you're clenching, if you're not speaking your truth, if you're literally swallowing and suppressing, if you're doing any type of somatic work, if you're stressed, if you're doing ancestral healing work, all of this, there will be some part of the mind that also is going tick, 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 or it might be going tick, 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 tick. If you're a Vata like me, it's constant tick, 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 tick. Now, obviously what that can do, it can show up as creativity as well. So it's not always a bad thing. It's when it becomes a high imbalance that we need to take count. But again, I digress. But if we're looking at Kapalabhati, if there's excess, sometimes kapha in the mind as well, where we're sluggish, we're not really wanting to feel empowered or step out or do anything motivating, this is also quite good. Skull shining breath is also amazing to do before meditation because it literally cleanses and clears the mind so you can drop into meditation a lot deeper. So that's one of the breaths. One of the second breaths is Nadi Shodhana. There's also a variation of this where you can do each nostril, so it's called alternate nostril breath. You can also use it where you just use on one side, and there's also a technique called Alom Valom. So Nadi Shodhana is where we inhale in one nostril, there's breath retention at the third eye. When I share in the video, I'm going to also add on a energetic level for you, where you can also look at expanding energetically through Nadi Shodhana practice. But Alom Valom is where there's no breath retention. So again, I'll guide that in the video, but what Nadi Shodhana does, it balances the left and right hemispheres of the brain. So again, high Vata. So Vata is Ayurvedic dosha, where it's excess air. So what actually happens is if we are always in the future, if we're anxious, if we're anxiety, or we struggle to ground, so Vata comes into play a lot as well when there's a change of seasons. So whatever dosha you are, you may be affected with Vata if there's a change in season. So if there's a tick, 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 tick in the mind, Nadi Shodhana literally balances the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. So it's often like a pendulum, like a tick, 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 and it just grounds. So instantly, just as I'm speaking about that, my breath is slower. So that's another breath. The third breath I wish to talk about is horse lips. So horse lips, this is amazing for anybody, but especially women if you are struggling with issues in your hips. So there is a connection, a deep connection, I'll share that on another video, between jaw and hips. So we hold a lot of emotion, we hold a lot of junk in our trunk. And if we're tight in our hips, we're going to be tight in our jaw, and vice versa. So when I used to teach a lot of hip opening in yoga, we always used to do, and I hope if there's some of you following on TikTok, I don't know if many of you or any of my students are on TikTok yet, but if you are following along, you'll know horse lips, and it's a lot of fun in a big class. So I'm going to show you that. So literally relaxes the jaw, relaxes the hips. And my favorite is Brahmari breath, bee breath, also known as honeybee breath. My favorite because it uses vibration, and as someone who works with sound a lot, frequency, vibration and energy, it has to be my favorite. So Brahmari breath, what this literally does, it vibrates every cell in your body. If you're working with an intention, if you're using it with a soul sankalpa, and if you're using it with water, which I'm going to show you in the video, and add on a whole other level to Brahmari breath, then you can literally shift every cell in your body. So if we're thinking of our physical body that's tight, our emotions might be rigid and constricted, our energy might be depleted. So again, if we look at constriction, we want to use breath as expansion. Vibratory breath all the way through the body, it's a joyful breath. In fact, there's another breath I can add on, but I digress. This is what happens when you're a Vata. You get so creative and you want to overshare. So there's 4 breaths I'm going to show you, and I hopefully that's helpful. And let me know if you are already doing some of these breaths and how that affects your jaw, your scalp, or pain in the body. So as promised, a quick gift, a tongue mudra that will instantly help relax the jaw. This is known as tongue at fire point. So tongue at fire point. What often happens is many of us have our tongue to the bottom of our mouth. Now actually, if we have our tongue to the top of our mouth, but we have our jaw relaxed, there's a stretch in the fascia, but there's a relaxation in the jaw, in turn a relaxation in the hips, in turn if we're working with emotions, we're also freeing up emotions. So this is a powerful, I call it a tongue mudra, it's a powerful place to put the tongue. So the tongue at fire point, you take the tip of the tongue behind the 2 front teeth. There's a little ridge there. Lips together, jaws relaxed. There should be actually a space in the back teeth. So maybe do that with me. Tongue at fire point, lips together, jaw relaxed. Anytime you feel tight during the day, tongue at fire point. Anytime you feel reactive, tongue at fire point. Anytime you feel like meh, tongue at fire point. Practice that, see how you feel, let me know how you get on. If you're already using this, share in the comments how you're finding this for yourself and maybe for your clients. And I'm going to share tongue at fire point and some breath work with some water and some energy as a full video in itself. So something you can do daily. We all have busy lives, so something that you can incorporate your own personal ritual to bring in vitality, to bring in health, to bring in some zing and expansion, not just in the body, but in the mind and in consciousness too. We are divine, human, conscious beings. We often forget and we just focus on the human part and forget about the divine. When we forget about the divine, we are just constricted. We're separate. We're separated from everything. So we just walk around very constricted in everything. You could say we're walking around more separation and fear and lack. When we embrace the divinity, the other side, you don't have to call it spirituality, you could call it energy or consciousness. We see ourselves as a multi-dimensional being. Life is just so much easier. So thanks again for listening. Much love, many blessings.